king of Babylon was throwing a banquet for 1,000 people that he wanted to impress when a hand suddenly appeared and started writing on a wall. It was terrifying. The hand drew a word puzzle on the wall that only the prophet Daniel was able to solve. It was bad news for the arrogant king. The puzzle message used balance scales as a metaphor for measuring the king's competence. Daniel told him what the puzzle revealed. These cryptic words written on the wall, when he deciphered them, said, "You have been weighed in the balance and found too light." In other words, your metal, king, has been measured, and though it appears on the outside like it's worth a lot, it's actually worth very little. You're a bad king because you placed value in the wrong things. And that night, the great Babylonian Empire fell. Welcome to Building Mettle, brought to you by Baird & Wilson Sheet Metal. As sheet metal workers, you measure the metal that you use to do your job, both the dimensions of the metal and the quality. In our lives, though, I know this is the way it is with me, I sometimes fail to measure the value of what really matters and instead place value on the things that don't. And this can lead to all sorts of problems in our relationships, which then affect everything, including our mental, physical, and spiritual health. I'm Eric Snyder, the company chaplain here at Baird & Wilson Sheet Metal. Besides that, I'm also responsible for logistics, which is mostly about moving stuff from point A to point B. But part of that responsibility is that I provide the tools every day that each job site crew will need to do their jobs. My hope is that maybe I can also provide some spiritual tools to help you and me build strength and resilience. That's the reason the word metal in building metal is spelled M-E-T-T-L-E. Because it isn't about steel or aluminum. It's a word that has to do with our ability to cope with difficulties and face demanding situations. This kind of metal is something God wants to build in our lives. King David wrote in Psalm 19 that the decrees of the Lord are more precious than gold. The decrees of the Lord are what is recorded in the Bible. The Bible is our balance scale by which we measure value. It's where we mine for metal. That's why people around the world start their day with prayer and reading the Bible. But for some, the Bible, it's difficult to read or understand, and I get that. Also, lots of folks just don't like to read. So the Bible can sometimes feel like an extra chore rather than a source of strength. Well, there's something about the Bible, though, that helps us work through all of that. It's worth the effort we put into understanding it. It reaches us through time and language and culture and our inabilities. It gives us encouragement and strength when we need it, and it can change us. Sometimes we need a change. It helps us to see what's truly valuable. And there are some key things that anyone can learn that can help us begin to understand and benefit from reading or listening to the Bible. First of all, I think we need to start with this premise. Whatever the Bible seems to say, the ultimate overall message is a good one, a really good one. That's the meaning of the word gospel. It just means good news. If it's not good news, it's not the Bible's overall message. Well, but wait a minute. When I think of the Bible, I think of some folks who are out there yelling bad news, like the bad news the king of Babylon received. Yeah, and often people miss the overall story and take things in the Bible out of context. So let's lay down the big context of the Bible. There are many scholars who have different ideas about this, but we have the words of the Bible itself to help us. In Luke chapter 24, Jesus gives a theological survey of the entire Hebrew Scriptures to a couple of his followers as they were walking along together. And it says in Luke 24 and verse 27 that beginning with the writings of Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the Scriptures concerning what? What was the main thing that he wanted to say to them from all the Scriptures? How to be a good person? How to get to heaven? How to be successful? He explained to them what was said in all the Scriptures concerning himself. So, as Hebrew scholar Tim Mackey of the Bible Project points out, the Bible is a unified story that leads to Jesus. That's a good summary. It's not just a random collection of unrelated stories written over thousands of years. It's one story. And it may not always seem like it, but from the beginning all the way through to the end, it leads to Jesus. Oh, why is that a big deal? Well, in the Gospel of John, chapter 12 and verse 45, Jesus says, "The one who looks at me sees the one who sent me." So what Jesus is saying is that he is the human description of God. If you want to know what God is like, and if you want to know what he thinks about you, look at Jesus. The message of Jesus and the meaning behind the stories that he tells is that God is crazy about you, the way a good father is crazy about his kids. Well, if he loves me, you might say, why has so much bad stuff happened to me and to other people for that matter? That's a great question. It's a question that people in the Bible ask many times. As we begin this journey, maybe you'll begin to find some tools that will help you arrive at some answers to that question. And hopefully some tools that will help us build metal into our lives. In the meantime, grab these 3 simple tools to take with you. Number 1, Jesus is what God is like. Number 2, Jesus is not a means to an end. He is the end. And number 3, you are more valuable to God than you will ever comprehend. This is Eric Snyder. We'll be here again soon with more tools from Building Metal. The music of Building Metal is a production of Jed Brewer and Good Loud Media, Oak Park, Illinois. Also special thanks to Christ Community Church, Oak Ridge, Tennessee.